Most people today assume cold weather survival begins and ends with a sleeping bag. That assumption would have gotten you killed in large parts of Europe during the Second World War. Soldiers and civilians alike learned very quickly that traditional bedding failed once moisture, wind, and prolonged exposure entered the equation. What quietly kept thousands alive was not a bag at all, but a simple, brutally effective tube system that modern survival culture has almost completely forgotten. This wasn't comfort gear. It was a heat conservation device designed by necessity, refined by experience, and proven night after night under freezing skies. If you want to understand how people actually survived cold nights before modern insulation marketing, this is where you need to pay attention. During World War II, armies fought in environments where resupply was unreliable and weather was merciless. From the Eastern Front to the Ardennes, cold injuries disabled more troops than enemy fire. Sleeping bags absorbed moisture, collapsed under body weight, and lost insulation when damp. The tube, by contrast, was designed to work with the human body rather than against it. It didn't promise warmth. It trapped it, preserved it, and prevented its escape. That distinction mattered. The World War II tube was essentially a narrow, enclosed thermal chamber formed by combining a bivouac sack, shelter half, or improvised fabric cylinder with layered clothing and ground insulation. The key feature was confinement. By reducing dead air space, the tube forced body heat to concentrate rather than dissipate. Soldiers learned that warmth was not about thickness, but about volume control. The smaller the heated space, the less energy the body wasted trying to warm it. This is a principle modern survivalists still routinely ignore. Materials varied widely depending on unit and location. German mountain troops used tightly woven shelter fabric treated with water repellents. Soviet soldiers often improvised tubes from greatcoats buttoned into cylinders. Allied forces used bivy sacks combined with wool blankets pulled tight around the body. What united all these approaches was the same logic: seal the body, eliminate drafts, and insulate from the ground before worrying about insulation above. Ground insulation mattered more than any covering. Veterans consistently noted that cold rose from the earth faster than it fell from the air. Pine boughs, straw, spare clothing, even empty ammunition crates flattened into a platform were used beneath the tube. Without this layer, no system worked. With it, even minimal coverings could keep a man functional through the night. This is where many modern reenactments fail, focusing on visible gear instead of invisible physics. The tube also solved a problem sleeping bags never addressed: well moisture management. In freezing conditions, sweat is lethal. Sleeping bags trap moisture, which then freezes, turning insulation into ice. The tube allowed controlled ventilation at the head and feet, preventing condensation buildup. Soldiers were taught to loosen the seal slightly once body heat stabilized, maintaining dryness without sacrificing warmth. This practice alone prevented frostbite and hypothermia in conditions where a sealed bag would have failed. Applying this knowledge today is straightforward, but it requires discipline rather than gear purchases. Start by reducing sleep space. Use a bivy sack, tarp, or heavy blanket to form a narrow enclosure around your body, rather than draping material loosely. Insulate the ground aggressively before adding layers above. Control airflow intentionally instead of sealing yourself completely. Most importantly, manage moisture by venting once warm, not before. These are steps WWII soldiers learned through suffering, not manuals. You know, modern winter campers can replicate this with shockingly little equipment. A waterproof bivvy, wool layers, a closed-cell foam pad, and a simple tarp folded into a tube outperform many expensive bags when conditions are wet and windy. Hunters, preppers, and long-term outdoorsmen quietly rediscover this every winter, often without realizing they're copying a wartime system nearly a century old. The tube also offered tactical advantages. It was, faster to deploy than tents, less visible, and quieter in high winds. For soldiers near enemy lines, these factors mattered just as much as warmth. Civilians hiding from occupation forces used similar methods in forests and barns, prioritizing concealment over comfort. Warmth, silence, and invisibility often went together. What's striking is, how little this knowledge survived post-war consumer culture. Sleeping bags became a product. The tube remained a technique. Techniques don't sell well, but they endure. Every serious student of history knows that what lasts isn't always what's marketed, but what works when things go wrong. If you're studying historical survival, this isn't trivia. It's a reminder that human adaptation beats equipment dependence every single time. The WWII tube wasn't elegant, comfortable, or branded. It was effective, and effectiveness is the only metric that matters when the temperature drops and the night stretches on. If this kind of hard-earned historical knowledge matters to you, subscribe to Iron Age Instincts, share this with someone who still thinks warmth comes from buying thicker gear, and help keep real survival history alive where it belongs.